There's a certain kind of damage that emotionally needy, consistently, intensely, emotionally needy primary caregivers, in most cases still mothers, but could be fathers or anyone, the damage that they do to their children. And the sad part is, for so many of them who are doing this, they really have no idea they're doing it. And look, all human beings are needy sometimes. And I do believe that, we go through phases in life as parents where, of course, we are not on our best game. We have our own traumas and all of those things. But if you are or were raised by an emotionally needy parent, it can set you up to really struggle with a few things in life. And that is what today's video is about. The first thing is that having an emotionally needy parent, a parent who really, let's define this, right? A parent who seems to turn to you as the child. Maybe you were 5, maybe you were 15, maybe it was always like that. But the goal is that you feel they need you to help regulate their emotions, to comfort them, to be their sounding board and the person to listen to them when they're mad at the other parent or the ex-parent or their job or their friends. It's like they make you a best friend. And a lot of this can be found, and we've talked a lot on this channel about enmeshment and parentification, which I'm going to come back to in a second. But what it really does at the core is it basically gives you the expectation as a child, and it might continue, it often does throughout your entire adult life, even once you've left the home or gone to college or had your own family. I see a lot of people with these emotionally needy parents who still feel like it's their job to take care of these parents emotionally. And what it does is it creates role confusion for you. So from the time you're little, the primary loving, ideally, and this person can be incredibly loving too, and fun and wonderful. It's not that they're necessarily eggshell or unkind. They might be very timid. They might have all kinds of mental health, disorders and difficulties. But the point is, you learn as the main center with this, attachment relationship, that the way relationships work, because this is your first exposure to relating is your parents, right? Your caregivers, that we don't get separate selves. We rotate around others and we pay attention to what they need, and it is always our job. And that's the thing. You often don't just have this role with this parent. You start to believe that your role in life, in all relationships, is to be the caretaker, the interpreter, the over-expecting reader of everyone else's emotions all of the time. In fact, you might be the person in the friend group who everyone talks to, who is, the therapist of the group, whatever it is. And so you become hyper-vigilant. I know I use this word all of the time, but it's so important. You become just a hyper-vigilant reader of emotional content in everyone and everything. Now, there's an extra burden in providing regulation. What I mean by that, and taking care of your parents' feelings. So, for example, if mommy comes home and she's had a bad day at work and she's oversharing, or she's like, oh, my coworkers are so mean to me, and why are they like that? And I don't get that. And they start crying, or she kind of just gets really well, what do you think? And you're 9 or whatever, right? Maybe you're 20. But the point is, you feel like, I need to make her feel better. I need to hug her. I need to cheer her up. I need to make her dinner. I need to not ask for that slip to be signed for school right now, or make that request because I want to go see my friends this weekend. I see a lot of kids who do this, where they're always trying to detect when is the best time to approach my parent about things, because they have learned that they will get shut down certain times of day, at certain activities, and the child becomes I can't give you an answer to that right now. I have to wait till my mom's in a good mood. Now, that might be true for all of us to a certain extent, but in this situation, this is how you almost always were or are, right? So now you feel responsible for other people's emotions. You over-focus on other people's emotions to your own detriment. You often minimize and invalidate what you feel in the service of taking care of others. You often feel guilty and chronically worried about this parent's well-being, let alone everyone else's. So now Once again, you're the human detector for everyone else's issue or pain or anger or whatever. And so as you keep doing this, right, what's happening to you? Your feelings don't matter as much, your desires. Going back to that example, like if there's a great activity you want to do with a friend, these kind of parents might decide that they need you. Oh, and they often do this. Oh, we need family time. Now, of course, family time is important. But when it gets to these more manipulative, needy kind of parents, and I hate to say it, I see this in two situations most. In single parents, and I see it in parents in not good marriages, right? Where there is a spouse, but the child is really the partner emotionally, or the children. It's usually a child or two that they pick. So now what you learn is that, like I'm saying, it's your job to take care of everyone else. And so you also get so enmeshed and so parentified and so like stuck to the guilt that you feel guilty for even complaining about them. You often feel the need to defend them. It's like even in therapy, if I start talking about these unhealthy patterns, in the beginning it can feel like you're betraying them or I'm talking them in some way. And it's really not about that. It's about looking at, like opening up the hood and saying, what is going on here? How do you really feel? How has it impacted you? But even that, you can feel very protective and defensive of these parents. Because there's this neediness, like you've taken on like, oh, but they can't help it. Oh, they had trauma. Oh, they're a single parent. Oh, they're struggling. And like all of that might be true. And no one is saying don't have compassion for your parents. I think it would be nice sometimes to feel like our kids did have more compassion for us, but that's not their job in childhood. It becomes their awareness often later in life as they grow up. But like you can't expect your kids to be like, oh, well, thank you for being such a good parent to me. Like, every child is entitled, in my mind, to having a good parent. That should be the bare minimum. And I mean good, meaning safe, generally safe. Not perfect, but safe. So needy parents like this are not safe. They're not safe because you can't be a separate self. What are the last few things? That the problem is that this becomes a really bad role model in your life, like I just said, for all of these things. And at the core for what healthy emotional, physical, mental boundaries look like. Because that situation of an emotionally needy parent is boundaryless. There's not a healthy hierarchy saying like, of course, sometimes our kids are going to be exposed to our bad day, our fights, our emotions. It's not that. It's that again and again and again, there was no real awareness of, hey, you know what? Let's wait till the kids go to bed before we discuss this. Or, you know what? Hey, when the kids go to that friend's house, we'll talk about my really bad day at work or whatever. Or I'll call my best friend. It's just always either given to or exposed to the child or around the child. And even if you're not doing this to them, but they're always hearing you on the phone with your friends and you're crying and you're needy and all of that, they still love you and feel for you, right? Even in the most complex situations, we are wired to stay close to our caregivers no matter what. So then it becomes a situation where in all the areas of your life, you're much less likely to even feel entitled to your own boundaries, to setting them yourself with your own partners and children. So you kind of can often repeat that cycle. And that's the model you've had, right? So a lot of this is about, looking at giving yourself permission to unpack these relationships, that you can love these parents with all your heart and on one part of you, but also look up at the other part and say, you know what? These parts weren't okay. These parts have affected me in these ways. This is something I want to go to therapy over or get books over. There are tons of books on emotionally needy, demanding, neglectful, eggshell, you name it, right? There are so many great books now. And they really do validate, and a lot of them talk about examples of ways to set boundaries and to learn to express yourself. And some of these parents can have a conversation with you and understand, and sometimes they can't. And these are better conversations for you and your therapist than you and these parents, right? So it's a lot about giving yourself permission to look at the relationship and do the work. And I can't even begin to go into all of that right now. But to look at things like how you respond to others' emotions. How do you overmake meaning and interpret others' feelings? How do you deal with your own feelings? Do you feel you're entitled to your own feelings? Do you have a separate self? This is a huge part of it, is that when you're raised like this with enmeshment and parentification, you don't often have a separate self. You're only good when that parent is good. And that becomes the parent can be replaced by your partner or your kids. And so as I've talked so much about this, The core of this is that you not having a separate self and you being hyper vigilant to everyone else, and in the process, neglecting yourself. So that's it. If you were, raised by a parent like this, or you are parenting like this, I would really encourage you to, without like shame and being hard on yourself, just sit back and look at it and say, I'm going to work harder at not expressing that in front of my kids or to my kids. I'm going to go get some support. I'm going to get a book because I was raised this way and now I'm doing it to my kids or my partner. Or I just feel like I don't have a separate self and I love this parent so much, but I feel guilty when I talk about how I really feel. That's a huge sign, right? Or I feel resentful while I also feel love. It is these relationships with the most loving and confusing and chaotic parents, as I always say, that I think are the hardest to unpack and deal with. Because if they're always bad, it's a little bit easier to go, yeah, I didn't get hardly any needs met. But when they could also be loving and wonderful and kind and good, as I've talked a lot about, where they can give you the good love or the bad love, it makes it really hard to even feel entitled to having your feelings and to doing the work. So you are entitled to doing the work, and you're entitled to having a different type of relationship in your life, even though you might love that parent so much. Or maybe you're really angry at them and that needs to be dealt with. That would be understandable and allowed and encouraged to be dealt with as well. We don't want you to stay in it, but maybe you were never entitled to your feelings. That's the whole thing. How can you have your feelings as a kid when you spent your whole childhood rotating around their feelings? And you are worthy of them, of your own life, of your own feelings and your own life. So, thanks for being here. Please stay safe and well, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.